9 out of 10 things went Apple's way, none of them were very significant.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been devastating if Apple had been declared a monopoly, but that wasn't likely, and it's not a big deal that they were.
Yeah. Well, I don't think even if Epic got what it wanted out of that, Apple itself could be declared a monopoly, especially because Apple is a mega structure of a bunch of smaller structures. The Apple Store, in this case, could have been considered a monopoly. I think that's the most they could pull out of it. I don't think you could actually get the entirety of the business to be considered a monopoly, even if they got...
Well, no, yeah. That was never on the table, though. I think it was just the App Store. And even then, it's really hard to say that because there is a thing called Android.
Yeah.
And it's like, as much as...
I don't even think Android was needed to consider this, though, based from what I was reading on it. Like, they could disprove it being a monopoly even without Android being an alternative.
Okay.
Or not that they could disprove it, it's that the other way around, even without having alternatives, they could not prove that it was a monopoly.
I mean, I guess you could say that it also competes against PC.
Yeah.
Because you can get apps and games on your PC.
Yeah.
It would have to be pretty, Yeah, yeah. It's not a monopoly. I never thought it was. I think the worst that they could have done would have been like declare that they are engaging in anti-competitive business practices.
Yes.
Or monopolistic business practices or something.
But they did not find any proof of any antitrust.
Yeah.
Aside from that, they were found to be uncompetitive, which does kind of fall into those practices, and that's why they are going to have to allow in-app purchases, or at least links that refer to websites and stuff for purchases, like in Fortnite.
Yeah, so maybe that's why Epic is not all that happy, because the judge did not say that they had to allow directly in-app purchases that bypass Apple.
All they can do is put like widgets or buttons or things like that can redirect them to places where they can buy, but whatever they buy there has to be able to be used in the app version. That was their way of allowing competition. And I think this is part of why Fortnite's not coming back. Like, until in-app purchases are fully allowed on the iTunes store or whatever, like for individual apps, I don't think they're bringing their stuff back to it.
Mm-hmm. So my question, and I'm not sure, I don't know if I'm going to be, I mean, I guess I'll have to read the text of it, is here's the thing. You can include a browser widget in your app.
Yes.
So the question is, can you effectively create an in-app purchase mechanism by having a link that opens a browser within the app that does all the things, that takes you to their store? Or does it have to redirect you to Safari to do the purchases, and then you have to go back to the app?
Skimming the document, I didn't see if that was specified. I'd have to go back and read, but I don't know.
And I don't even know if the judge understands that.
He probably doesn't.
I don't know if any judge understands the difference, because the former option would be could basically be everything that Epic wants. It would be a seamless experience, really. You could pass in all the information from the app. I mean, you still could, actually. I don't even know why they're not happy.
Yeah.
Because effectively, you can pass all the information you need to a website that looks all nice and formatted in mobile and looks like an app, do your purchases, and then go back to the game, and it's in the game.
Yeah.
So, to me, this is a huge deal potentially because you can just totally bypass Apple now. I mean, you always could, but it was like a roundabout process. You couldn't put the link in your app.
Oh, no, you couldn't.
Like,
you have to put it on your website somewhere. So people would have to know to go to your website.
And you can put a link to your website in the app, but Apple would look at, trust me, because I've tried. Yeah. Apple will look at that and say, oh, this takes you to this website where it takes you to a place where you could do the purchases without paying us our 30%.
Yeah.
And now that has to be allowed, which is potentially huge. I mean, any app, I mean, it's going to be more seamless if it goes through the Apple process. But if you want your 30%, you can now totally bypass Apple.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And Apple doesn't really have to do anything when they say it needs to be implemented within 90 days. All that means is they change their process of approval. They don't have to actually do anything.
Yeah.
Because it's up to the app developer.
Yeah, I don't know. This is, I don't know. Like, I wasn't really invested in whatever the ruling was going to be too much on this anyway. Because honestly, even from like a developer standpoint, I've always had like the idea of if I go into it, fuck Apple. I know like those are the people who end up paying more for stuff, but at the same time, it's like the idea with Sony. I don't want to jump through the hoops that Apple wants me to jump through just to be able to do stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really care about Epic as a company. It could basically die tomorrow as a development studio for even the fact that the Unreal Engine is pretty good. Like that company could disappear tomorrow and I wouldn't care. So it's kind of like watching a dog fight where you had no dog in the fight.
Yeah, you hate both the dogs.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. Even following this, I'm not really satisfied with this judgment on either side.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of it too is because we're currently in an age where these type of technological suits are so fucking new that there are plenty of lawyers that are starting to be familiar with the technology. Because there's a lot of younger lawyers that have, they grew up with the internet and they're still on the internet and they grew up with games and they know how all this shit works. But there aren't like any judges yet that understand technology because judges tend to be older. They tend to formerly be lawyers and they're appointed their positions. So none of the lawyers that know what they're doing now will probably be judges until like another half generation at the soonest. So we're dealing with people who are trying their best to wrap their heads around all this shit given the evidence. But they're the ones that have to interpret this evidence. And I'm not sure any judge currently can interpret this evidence well.
Well, interestingly, though, the more I think about it, the more I realize, in my opinion, I think that the judge came up with the exact right solution. Because here's the thing.
He did by accident, and that's why I'm not satisfied with this. That's my problem.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, so here's the thing. It's kind of perfect because it's like, okay, Apple runs it all, and like, if you want the most seamless and simplest way to do in-app purchases, just do it through Apple and pay them the 30%. But if you want to compete and you want to build your own thing, it may not be quite as integrated as Apple's, but you could do, if you're careful, you can do a pretty good job and make it almost as good. I mean,
yeah.
Especially if you're like Epic, where you have to have a login anyway. Like once you've got a login and potentially have like a credit card stored with your account and all that stuff, it could be practically as good.
Yeah.
As Apple's, and so it's kind of.
We've talked about this before. I totally agree that if you're on Apple and you're running through their app, like their store, they deserve their cut. Like otherwise, this game is on their device for free, and they're hosting the updates and everything through their store. They deserve a cut. I think we even talked about this. Like, the best solution, honestly, would be to force Apple to allow people like Epic to have their own app store on there. Like, you could put like an Epic Game Store on an Apple device, and that would solve this problem too. You wouldn't be going through the Apple Store. The only issue is that you'd have to get the app for the Game Store through the Apple Store because of the way they run their devices. Because you can't just install it off of the internet.
You can.
You can.
They could allow you to do that.
Well, they could, yeah, but Apple doesn't currently let you install things off the internet.
Right.
You have to go through the iTunes Store.
Right. But you could. Like, Apple
possible,
bought...
They just don't.
Yeah. But the judge specifically did not allow that.
Yeah.
That's one of the remedies that Epic was looking for. But Apple bought... There was an application called Test Flight that developers use to do exactly this. It's essentially a separate app store, and Apple ended up buying it, but you can still you use it now. It's built into the Apple development tools, and it gives you a second app store essentially where you can load just your specific apps. But the phone has to be in developer mode, and you have to be in contact with the developer, and the developer has to choose which phones.
Don't get why that wasn't the solution, though. Even looking at some of the stuff in here.
Because it's very easily doable. Apple would just have to say, okay, you can create your own app store now.
And that's even going back to thinking that the judges don't understand the technology. Right? Because there's no reason Epic couldn't have their own launcher app on Apple. Like, any reason whatsoever. Android lets you have your own launcher apps because Android doesn't have a fucking stick up its ass.
I mean, the problem as Apple sees it is that it would cause them to lose control, and you would end up with a situation with that Android and Windows has to deal with like malicious apps and that sort of thing that could potentially give you viruses and such. Or, just screw up your phone. So, I mean, presumably Epic would very tightly control their store to prevent all that. But once you open the floodgates, then anybody can make an app store.
Yeah, because the alternative to that would be to have approved stores, but then again, because of the deal with Epic, Apple would just not approve their store unless a court junction forced them to.
Yeah, I mean, what are the criteria for approved stores? And then you basically get into Apple having to practically curate other people's stores because it's like, okay, what if they approve the store, but then the store allows in all kinds of malware, and then would Apple jump in and say, okay, your store's not approved anymore? It's like they'd have to police everybody. Yeah.
Well, I agree. I think he did come to at least one of the right decisions. I think there were like a couple routes it could have went, but I don't think it was for the right reason. It's kind of like I complain all the time when Death Battle picks the right winner of their death battles, but for all the wrong reasons. Like they don't actually get it right. I really don't think he understood what was going on here.
Yeah. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with Apple potentially having to allow other app stores like Android does. And then it's just kind of, it becomes a little bit more Wild West, but a bit more, that's what Android is. And it's not like the whole Android ecosystem has collapsed because
most users
some malware out there.
Go their entire time using an Android device without ever dealing with malware. Like it doesn't affect like 90% of users.
Yeah. Or even probably downloading somebody else's app store.
Yeah.
Most users probably don't even realize those exist.
Yeah.
But, so they usually go through the Google Play Store. Actually, most Android users don't even don't even understand the Google Play Store.
Well, or they'll use an alternative because they don't understand, right, that the Google Play Store is the main store. They'll use like the API version of the Google Play Store that like Samsung made, which is the Samsung store
Yeah.
that still has access to literally all the APKs that are on the Google Play Store. They have to give their cut to Google, but also has access to all their independent shit that they do that's Samsung only.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I understand Apple's mindset, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the way it is.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Mac. You can download applications from anywhere on the web, just like Windows.
Well, you know what actually might become a problem for them? They might eventually have to allow direct program downloads on their phones, given the direction the fight for the right to repair is going. Because, like, I will criticize the current administration for 99% of the shit that it's doing, but the right to repair, there was an executive order signed for it. I don't like that it's an executive order. It needs to go to Congress and become like actually certified into law. But that fight actually has been progressing into the right direction towards civil liberty, and it's not just hardware when it comes to the right to repair. Software is under there too, because some things will no longer work if the software is intentionally bricked by the company. And a lot of this stuff could be patched and fixed by individuals. And people may have to, like, certain companies may have to let people fix the software eventually.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's probably still years down the road, because I don't think the people running laws understand the first thing about software. They kind of understand hardware, because hardware has been around forever now. So that's obviously going to be where things start. But Apple might find itself in 10 years having to let people download shit anyway. Right? They're just pushing that down the road as far as they can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's an interesting ruling. And Buck apparently thinks that Apple's quality control is shit.
You know, I wouldn't say that. I'll say a lot of things from Apple is shit. If anything, their quality control might be a little too good, like on the opposite end of the spectrum, because there's a lot of things that probably should be allowed that are great quality that they just don't let for dumb reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, pretty much. I figured we had to talk about it, though, because we've been following it here and there as news came out. So, for you guys at home listening to this, I want to let you know that everybody was a loser in this case.
Yeah.
Even
that's how you know it was the right
the
decision.
Audience. Yeah.
But I assume everyone's going to appeal everything, right? Apple's going to appeal. Epic's going to appeal.
Maybe. Like I said, I think Epic has grounds to appeal based on the judge saying that it wasn't impossible that Apple could be doing monopolistic things. They just failed to prove it, which is usually a term that there are conditions in which that you might be approved for appeal. Yeah. Meaning that you could bring new evidence to the court and everything. I don't know. I'd have to see. I don't know what grounds Apple really has to appeal, but as long as they're not prohibited from it, they could always just run an appeal on the decision they lost anyway. It seems like they'll probably lose it again. Because of the one thing they won, it was kind of like the most basic thing that, like, they were almost guaranteed to win that if they lost everything else.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, if I was Apple, even if they don't appeal anything, I would just start rolling up the defenses right now, like thinking, like, what can we use just in case this shit happens? Because I still think, regardless, Apple still just has the easier defense here. Like, I don't think an appeal will go into Epic's favor anyway. I think they got what they're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Yep.
yeah, it's trying to invade an island fortress by ship. It's like, we can only fire so many cannonballs.
Well, yeah, I still don't quite understand. Like, is Apple going to allow Epic back on their, or not allow them just for spite? Can they do that?
No, I think Apple has to allow them to at least do what the judge said. Epic's just not bringing their stuff back anyway.
Oh, they're not interested?
No, they said they're not bringing Fortnite back. For at least a long time, if ever, because there's like certain things have to change before we bring it back. And now that itself might actually be in spite of Apple, right? Because the contract's already been breached, right? The initial one that they have to pay for. After they clean up their marking period, they're under no obligation to leave their game on the store or anything like that. I think Apple's at more of a loss than Epic is. Because when it comes to like app money, the vast majority of what's spent is parents on their kids. And not because kids necessarily steal their parents' credit card or anything, but you know parents when it comes to buying shit for their kids, right? Like, most of them will just like, here's $10, go, don't bother me for like several hours, right? More money spent on these app stores for kids than like adults spending it on themselves. Because to be honest, most adults are too busy to be spending that much money on themselves. They're spending all day at a job or whatever. And the most popular thing on the store that I know of for kids to spend money on were the Fortnite V-Bucks. So now, I mean, yes, they were circumventing Apple, but I think Apple still wanted Fortnite on the system so they could get their cut of the V-Bucks. They're going to get what's owed them, but they're not going to get anything else in the future from that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, was playing Fortnite on mobile a good experience anyway?
For kids who don't know any better, yeah.
I can't imagine doing it. Like, you know, if you have the option of playing either on PC or on Switch or something like that.
I think Switch is probably the only viable alternative in this case if we're really just talking about young kids. Most kids don't play games on computers until they get older, if they do. The PC gaming audience is one of the smaller of the gaming audiences. Mobile has been blowing up in general just because of the casual audience. And a lot of kids are just handed tablets now.
Yeah. I mean, I know my son plays Fortnite on his Switch.
Yeah. Yeah, the Switch is definitely a viable alternative to that, but most kids, if they weren't playing on Switch, were probably playing it on like a tablet or something. You didn't think it wasn't a phone. It was like an iPad or whatever is what most people would be playing Fortnite on.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just can't imagine playing it with on-screen controls.
I can't either, but how many people play Genshin Impact with on-screen controls? The mobile version was far more popular than the PC version.
Yeah.
It's just the way that like the younger market's going. They're used to being on their phone. That's how they prefer to do things. Even if it's like a less efficient way to play a game.
Well, it does seem like Epic is just doing this out of spite then. Because it seems like they now have everything that they wanted. Don't they? What didn't they get? I mean,
I'm guessing the one thing they didn't get was true in-app purchases. I don't know.
That's where I don't quite understand.
Getting this victory and not returning is the real win for them. Maybe this was their win condition. It's like, we wanted Apple to lose something, but we're still not coming back anyway.
But, like, they could make it so that Apple gets nothing else from them.
Yeah.
They could make it so that you don't even have the option of doing a Apple, App Store in-app purchase.
Yeah.
They could just remove that and only have the option. See, this is where I don't quite understand. Can you essentially, based on this ruling, build your own in-app purchase, but just have it be in a browser?
I don't know.
Where to the end user, it would be seamless. because you could put a little browser window inside the app and make it look exactly like you want. I don't know. I don't know if they'd be allowed to do that.
I'm honestly not sure. The document is pretty thick.
Yeah.
I think at this point in time, because of how new it is, people have only had a chance to skim it. I don't think anybody's been able to go through it with a fine-tooth comb.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we'll find out in the future. Obviously, Epic and Apple have had time to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. But that's because they've got professional lawyers who right there on the spot that, you know, they can be reading it as the decision's given out and everything. And
yeah,
I'm sure they know from being in the case or not whether they got what they wanted before anybody else did. Yeah.
Although I imagine their lawyers have to figure out what the ruling says too.
Yeah. I think usually it's faster for the people in the courtroom to figure out what the ruling says as it's given to you, just from the context of everything that had been going on in the court case.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of times you can piece it together before you actually have to read the fine details, because at least the statement part, the actual judgment of the ruling, is said to you by the judge itself, and then you have to go into the fine details. But like, I'm pretty sure they know exactly what it means to them as it's given to them from the judge.
Mm-hmm.
It's us, the people who weren't in the courtroom and laboring over trying to present the evidence and argue our case for a year now, that are only seeing things from a distance and then having to read the actual ruling at the end, that need to figure out what it means to them.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is fascinating because, you know, I did app development for several years, and this is one of those sticking points that I even ran into with the Apple approval process, where they're like, nope, can't link to a thing that does a thing that we do because we need our cut.
Can you still do like the old like 90s way of telling people to do things on the internet where it's like, search keyword blank in your browser?
Yeah.
Remember those old commercials? You're like on, there's freaking like Nickelodeon or something. It's like, search keyword. They didn't even give you a URL, anything. It was just like keywords because the internet was so barren at the time.
Well, it would usually be an AOL keyword.
Yeah,
right?
It would be. Yeah.
That was sort of the precursor to hashtags.
Yeah.
Yeah. AOL keyword. Vomitorium.
Yeah. It's like they weren't the only option, but it was like the only legitimate option. So like, what, 80+% of people using the internet were on AOL at one point in time?
Yeah, yeah. See, I don't remember, I don't know. Like, technically, here's what you could have done before today. You could have had an app that's free where you create an account.
Yeah.
And then you could say to people, go to our website. I don't know what
Apple could do to stop you.
Yeah, I don't know how much you would have to obscure it. But essentially, you could have people go to your website, buy whatever in-app currency you want to sell on your website, and then when you go back to the app, it connects up the logins, and now you got your in-app currency. So you could have done that, but it's kind of like you'd have to fly under the radar. Like, if Apple finds out that you did that, they might ban your app. You know what I mean?
Okay. So what we're gonna do is all purchase of currency is going to be on the website, but each individual coin of the currency is going to be connected to an NFT that links up to the blockchain on the app inside.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, it was just kind of like, you could have done this before, but it had to be very obscure, and you had to hope and pray that Apple doesn't find out.
Yeah, yeah.
And now it's just like, okay, you can now just do that out in the open. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's stuff like that did actually annoy the shit out of me, where it's just like, why can't I just do this? Apple, lay off, you know, what is your deal?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, man. This is, like I said, I've already written off Apple as a form of doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like years ago, in the same way that like a couple years ago or so, I wrote off doing anything with Sony. Because just, like, the approval process for everything is so stupid that I don't feel like jumping through their hoops. I'll jump through a couple hoops, but I'm not going to be like a whole fucking flea circus over here. But in more uplifting news, you want to talk about something that's a little cool?
Sure.
This year, around this time, we are celebrating the 35th anniversary of the Konami Code. First introduced in Gradius.
Cool.
And Konami is actually doing a lot of shit for this anniversary, believe it or not. Like, you'd think this would be kind of like a Passover thing, because technically it's also the anniversary of, like, Gradius, but who really cares that much about Gradius? It's not like it's a huge Konami seller. When's the last time they made a game in that franchise, right?
Right.
But the Code has been so impactful to video game culture and to even them as a company that they're actually celebrating this anniversary with, like, a bunch of, like, retro soundtracks with, like, DJ remixes and stuff like that, and merchandise involving it too, which is kind of cool. Like, this is a piece of video game history and culture here.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Konami Code merchandise.
Yeah. So, like, I think one of the ones I saw was like a pullover sweatshirt, like a hoodie that had like the up, down, left, right, and I think one of them I saw was Enter. It should be a Start because that's how it was on originally. But if you were doing it on the computer, I guess Enter would work too. If you were trying to play multiplayer, you'd have to hit Select before Start.
Right. Yeah, I was always confused when people said Select Start, and I was like, what?
That's because they were used to inputting it for
start.
Player 2. Right?
Yeah,
if you're going to play two players, you have to hit Select to go over to the next option and then hit Start.
Yeah. But I definitely used it in Contra.
Yeah. Oh man, playing Contra without it is a pain.
Yeah. Like, I've seen Mike Matei beat Contra without the code.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm not going to spend the time to
get good.
To get good, yeah. Because you can beat it. I mean, I beat it very recently with the 30 lives. That's all it took to beat it. It's not that hard of a game.
Yeah.
But you know, I think I died more than 3 times. Just not more than 30 times.
Yeah. But sadly, the guy who created the code won't be around to celebrate it, though, as Hashimoto actually passed away just this last year.
Oh, man.
So he missed the 35th anniversary by 1 year.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Wow, he was only 61?
Yeah.
Wait, he died in February 2020.
Yeah.
So last year.
That's what I said, just
Did
this
you say
last
that?
year. Yeah, last year.
Oh, okay. Well, you said this last year. I thought you meant...
Oh, no, I meant the year before that.
Earlier this year.
No.
Yeah. Man, that's rough, dying at 61.
Yeah, well, that's not uncommon when you are a Japanese developer. You know how they work themselves to death.
Yeah, I guess
Surprised he made it to 61.
Wait. This says that you can use the Konami code in Castlevania?
You can use the Konami code in most things in general. You can use it in games that aren't even Konami. It's become such a staple that other people throw it in there.
Frankly, I didn't even know that you could use any other games besides Contra and Gradius.
Oh, no, dude. DDR, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, all kinds of stuff that's in there.
It says, if the player enters the Konami code in Gradius 3 on the SNES, the player's ship will blow up.
Nice. Yeah, they've kind of just thrown it as an Easter egg now. Like, even if it doesn't do something good, it always does something to surprise the player. I mean, heck, Fortnite even has a Konami code minigame.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everything
Really?
has it. Yeah. It was during, like, the whole Black Hole event or whatever. Like I said, it's become such a staple to video game culture and history that Konami itself isn't the only one that uses the Konami code. Other people do as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, there's a list of 103 games that use it.
Yeah. I know people who've never even played either Gradius or Contra that know the Konami code. Like, you could ask them the Konami code, or if they don't know it's called the Konami code, there's certain things that you could say, like sometimes it's called the 30 life code, sometimes it's called the 100 guy code, because in some games it actually went up to 99 instead of just the 30. There's a few different names. Yeah. If you ask somebody like, oh yeah, I know that one, and they'll just like be able to rattle it off.
I mean, it was featured in Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah.
They mentioned it.
I think it was even featured, I don't remember if it was in the movie, but it's like in the book for Ready Player One.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's like everybody knows it. That's why, like, I think it's cool that they're actually doing a celebration for it. Because they even know how much like, it's just a part of the culture.
Man, I have the Castlevania collection on my Switch. I'll have to try that. Because Castlevania is fucking hard. It's like... I've never beaten Castlevania.
The original, yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah,
like, even 2 is way easier than the first one.
Oh, yeah, I beat 2.
Yeah.
I beat 2 as a kid. I mean, that game is, like, specifically easy.
Yeah. like, 1, there's the frickin' monster, like Frankenstein's monster and Flea Man fight is particularly hard, because you have to, like, get to certain positions and cheese it. Because the Flea Man's just jumping around everywhere. And obviously the final... Yeah, in the original. Because there's the fight with the monster, and then the Flea Man's jumping around while you're fighting the monster.
Yeah. And
then there's also the fucking fight with the Dracula himself. That is hard as fuck.
Yeah.
And, like... It doesn't matter how well prepared you go into that fight. You basically can only afford to get hit 5 times. Throughout more than one stage of a boss fight. Like, in total, you can only really get hit 5 times. That is a challenge of a fight. Especially in a game before save states.
And that game and Ghosts and Goblins were the bane of my childhood existence. I never beat either one of them. To this day, I've never beaten either one of them.
You know what's the bane of my existence? The Versus Castlevania arcade cabinet, which is literally just the original Castlevania. But both controls are active at the same time, and both players control the frickin' character together. So you can, like, fuck with each other's inputs. And I'm like, why is this a thing? Why does this exist?
That's crazy.
Yeah. Versus Castlevania, or versus that dickhead standing at the machine next to me.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Like, which one, if someone pushes left and the other person pushes right, which one takes precedence?
I think the game itself just always prioritizes right, because that's the main direction of the game. Like, yeah, there are times where you go, like, up and backwards and stuff, or even when you get to the end and you have to start going left to get to Dracula. But, like, due to coding and the trajectory of the game, it just always prioritizes right if both are inputted at the same time. Which would really suck if I ever made it far enough to get to the end where you need to start going left.
Crazy.
Yeah. I love the map to the original, though, right? Like, the map is so cool because it's basically a linear game, unlike later Castlevania games, but it's made in a way that it doesn't appear to the player to be linear, because the way it winds in one direction and then curves back around to the other. But, like, realistically, you could have, like, straightened this out and then flattened it, and it equally still would have been as linear game as any other platformer at the time.
Yeah. I remember the first time I played Castlevania was at a friend's house.
Did you hate the game?
It was. I loved it at first. I don't know that I ever owned it.
Yeah.
I feel like I only played it at that friend's house, and I think we didn't get very far, and so I was probably like, I don't think I want to own this because I think I'll just.
Yeah, well, it's like I don't think I've owned a copy of the original. I've played it many times, but I don't think I've ever owned it.
Yeah, I think that may have been the first NES game I ever played. Because I think going to that, I think that friend had the NES and I didn't have it yet, and I'm pretty sure that was the first game I ever played on the NES. So this was after playing on the Atari 2600.
Yeah, that would be a big step up.
yeah.
Day and night different, yeah.
I think I loved it just because it looked amazing and, it was a huge step up. But I don't think I ever actually owned it.
We did own 2 and 3. I played those a lot growing up.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't even think I played the original until I want to say I was like 7. Because my cousin owned it, and that's when I played it. And then, like, later on, you got, like, virtual channels and stuff like that, but I don't think I played a copy of that till I was 7, and then I don't think I played it regularly enough to actually remember what was going on until maybe I was 13.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and interestingly, I own 2 and 3 as well, and I'm fairly certain I beat 3 on multiple occasions.
Oh, 3's easy. 3's the easiest of all 3 of them. Yeah, I think 3 is way easier.
I played it recently. Man, I played it recently, and I found it hard. Recently.
You're probably in your own head, because, like, the AI is super predictable in 3. Like, the way it runs, all the patterns and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, 3's easy.
I just remember once you get Grant, it becomes super easy. Because he can just go anywhere.
Yeah.
And he jumps higher and farther and sticks to walls and all kinds of shit. So,
like, I found 2 mechanically, like the way it controls and stuff, to basically be just as difficult as 1. It's just the game wasn't as stupid, which made the game so much easier, right? Like, enemies were programmed better, so there was a lot of less problem with like hit detection and stuff. So that was good. The routing of the game was much better as well. Like, it was an easier game, not because it should have been easier, but just the game was made better overall, which probably just comes from the experience of having made the first game before it, like a lot of sequels happen to be.
Yeah, and what's funny is that people today find 2 to be so obscure, and it's like, how are you supposed to know to kneel at the wall and all that kind of stuff, and use the crystal and everything. Here's the thing: when I had it as a child, I also had Nintendo Power, and Nintendo Power pretty much was the full walkthrough of the whole game.
Oh yeah. Nintendo Power was so fucking good. I miss it.
Yeah. So that's why people who say things are, and like the original Zelda, people find difficult to figure out where to go and all that. I was like, I had the Nintendo Kids Club that had all the maps to everything, both quests and everything.
There's another problem. A lot of the resources, I'm not even talking about Nintendo Power, because you do have a legitimate claim to say that, like, well, the resources of the game shouldn't have had to have been in a magazine that you had to pay for a subscription that didn't even come from the company that made the game, right? Because Nintendo
but everybody did
Castlevania. Yeah, but I mean, like, there's reasonable excuse, especially for the longevity of a game, that you shouldn't need that, right?
I understand, but you got to understand the culture at the time.
Yeah, I understand the culture. So this is where I do give a defense for some of them, like Zelda specifically. Zelda came with a map. If you had a in-box copy of the game, there was a fold-out poster map that came with it. Yeah. That showed you what Hyrule looked like, with a couple squares missing, but that's because they wanted to save that for your own exploration. But the main portion of the game, you had the whole map in front of you. The only thing it didn't help you on was the Lost Woods, because it didn't tell you what the pattern was for getting through the Lost Woods. But aside from that, the map told you where to go.
I feel like someone in the game tells you. Did someone in the game tell you?
The game actually does tell you how to,
northwest, southwest, or something.
The game doesn't expect you to just, like, run through the place blindly until you randomly figure out the pattern.
Yeah, there's a hint somewhere.
Actually,
But
there's
I
a hint
also
for
do feel
literally
like
everything in the game except for a few random bombable places on the overworld. But even some of the bombable places, there is a character that gives you a hint about them.
Yeah, I think they tell you about where to bomb on Spectacle Rock and that sort of thing. But plus they tell you Spectacle Rock is an entrance to death.
Yeah. So like I justly, even regarding culture, if we're talking about history and archiving and the longevity of stuff, as much as I love Nintendo Power, I can't use that as a justified source for like people now struggling through a game. Because it's like, well, you could always go look up the information online. It's like, yeah, but there's a certain air of exploration and not having to go to external sources to be able to play a game. But older games, with the way they were made, they came with manuals. Some of them came with maps and stuff like that. It's a shame that these things don't come with games anymore. But at least some remakes to games do come with maps built in, right? Like,
yeah, that's the thing. They've been replaced by in-game maps and things like that, and things like, you know, in Final Fantasy, where I was complaining that the original Final Fantasy didn't tell you which weapons were better than which.
But it came with the game when you
the game came with a thing that listed everything.
Yeah.
And which, you know, and it even, it listed all the spells and everything like that.
So you don't waste your money like, oh, the Black Mage cannot hold this dagger for some reason. Yeah. Okay, whatever, I won't waste my money on it.
Yeah. But yeah, that's been replaced by basically all that information is typically in the game. But at the time, that all made sense, and people were fine with that as far as having the physical map come with the game, because it's like that we didn't really expect the game to have an in-game. It didn't
cost much either, right? Because they were already printing out the manual anyway. At the same place the manual is printing, they just like print out this extra copy, folded up the thing, and put it in there. Some games came with posters and stuff too, like even all the way up into the Super Nintendo. What was the game that I had? My dad got a promotion for it, but this isn't where we got the poster from. I used to have a shirt for the Illusion of Gaia, because my dad and my mom went to like a promotion event. I think I was even with them. I was like a little potato at the time that my mom would have been holding, but. We had a shirt for the Illusion of Gaia when they went to go pick up the game and everything. But when they opened up the box, inside the box, unfolded, was a poster for the Illusion of Gaia. Like, cool shit used to come with games all the time. They just don't do that anymore.
Yeah. Definitely. That's why I love my copy, wherever it is, of Nox Archaeist.
Yeah. Or people
came with a cloth map.
Limited run games, a ripoff, and to some degree they might be. It depends, you know, the market will tell you if it's a ripoff or not. But like for the cost of a normal game, when we bought the Scott Pilgrim, it spent like $60 on there. You saw the shit that came with that. And the Nox Archaeus thing. I was forgetting the name of that. I was trying to bring that up to somebody recently.
Oh.
Because I remember you talking about it. It's like, you know, people are still developing games for the Apple II. And they're like, what? And it's like, I could not remember the name of the fucking game.
That reminds me.
Yeah.
You know what we can do now?
What?
Did you see that the epilogue... Oh, shit. What is it called? I need to look it up. It's available now. The epilogue... Let me bring up their website. GB Operator.
Oh, hey, yeah.
Is now for sale.
Nice.
To remind people.
I can't afford it at the moment, but nice.
Yeah, I've not bought it yet, and Frank, they're so backed up. If you buy it today, I think you don't get it till December.
Yeah.
But to remind people, it's a little device that you plug into your computer where you can play Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games directly from it, and you can also rip games, you know, to like an ISO or whatever the file name is. But you can play real Game Boy games on it.
Yeah.
Here's what I didn't know you could do, but found out, I believe, today. You can write games to a blank cartridge. So if you wanted to make, if you wanted to make a Game Boy or Game Boy Advance game and sell it in cartridges, you'd have to purchase the cartridges from somewhere. You can use this to make your cartridges.
Yeah. Well, that was the.
So I think we should make a Game Boy game.
Because some people are like, why would I get a external hardware adapter for Game Boy games for my computer when I could just emulate a ROM? And the answer is, not only is it cool to be able to use the hardware, like you can use your physical copy of your games on your computer, but it's better, right? So Game Boy's not hard to emulate near perfectly because how simple the hardware is and how old it is. But there are still hiccups here and there because you are still emulating hardware through software. With this case, it's literally the Game Boy's hardware that's doing everything, including the chip in the game itself. It's not just like the data file that was put in the chip. So you have 100% of the necessary hardware in here. The emulator at this point is mostly just running the screen function and the button inputs. But this is the best emulation for a Game Boy you're ever going to get, because effectively you're not emulating a Game Boy, you're just playing one.
Yeah. Exactly. But I didn't realize that it had a write. It had write functionality. And someone was demonstrating how they could put in a blank Game Boy cartridge and write to it. I'm like,
you know what I bet?
We could make a Game Boy game.
How they made this in the first place and how they figured out how to make the hardware is, I bet it all started with them finding a Game Boy dev kit.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot of emulators have been made in the past. Is somebody finding a dev kit for one of those old, we have to assemble the game directly on the dev kit or whatever, and then reverse engineering it into some form of software. But most of them don't decide, hey, I'm going to try to condense the dev kit into a little driver that I can plug into my computer and actually still run it as is.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, we could totally do considering how much Nox Archaeus got for making a fucking Apple II game, imagine coming up with our, a Game Boy Advance game that we sell on cartridges.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. I think the Buckler beat 'em up game should be a Game Boy game.
Awesome. I don't think Dillard would be up for that because I think he wants something that he could play on his phone or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe his PlayStation, something like that.
Yeah. There's probably a Game Boy emulator for Android.
Oh, there definitely is. But
in fact, I know there is because my stupid Retroid thing is basically Android running a Game Boy emulator. So
I'd be down to make a Game Boy game, though. I love things with retro aesthetic.
I wonder. I'd have to look up information on how to develop a Game Boy game. I don't even have a clue.
Well, we're gonna have to go back to assembly.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, I mean, it's not hard to learn how to code things in assembly. But it is fucking tedious and a pain in the ass at times.
Surely there's some sort of game engine that somebody has built
that can
where you
export.
Can do it. Yeah.
Maybe.
Surely. I'd have to search. I'll search for it after the show.
Yeah.
Surely. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, how many people are making Game Boy games these days?
I don't know. There's people making Atari games.
Yeah.
Like Atari 2600 games. There's new ones out there.
There's a thing for retro. There might be more people making Game Boy games than Game Boy Advance games.
Mm-hmm. And Commodore 64.
Yeah.
There was another Kickstarter. I forget the name of it. I think it might be still live. Maybe not. for a game that was like I can't remember. It was either like a Commodore 64 game or a ZX Spectrum or something like that. I did not buy into because I was like, oh god, that's too retro even for me.
Yeah.
Whatever it was pre Apple II. I was like, oh my god.
Let's make a game that only works on Wonder Swan.
Yes, I want a Wonder Swan still. To this day.
Like I didn't want one back then because how crap it is, but they're like I wouldn't mind having one now just to have one, especially because like batteries are cheaper now than they used to be, right?
Well, I
even just
wanted one
AC
when
adapter, you know.
Yeah, I wanted one when they were first announced. I think I was probably reading about it in a magazine, and I was bummed it never came to the States, did it?
Yeah, no. It's because it was a crap system. That's why.
Yeah. I really only wanted it because I wanted to play the remake of Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
That was the only thing I wanted it for. And I was like,
with the worst sound engine.
Yeah. Still better than the NES, though, right?
Yeah, I guess. Maybe.
Marginally.
It's less bings, but it's still like a lot of high-pitched noises. I have the actual soundtrack on my hard drive for the Wonder Swan Final Fantasy. I'll play it for you sometime and call so you can judge for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, something tells me I actually don't want a Wonder Swan.
Yeah. Like it'd be a cool thing to own, but I don't think I'd find myself playing it very often at all.
Yeah.
But
and
like,
the problem is, like I said, like everything would be in Japanese.
Well, and another reason why it didn't do well. And people like, why there were all of these full color handheld systems. How the hell did the Game Boy that was black and white kick all of their asses? Two reasons. Partially because it was black and white. The Game Boy, even the original fat brick, was still smaller than pretty much every color handheld device that was coming out. And then once the Game Boy Pocket came out, that kicked their asses even harder. And part of it was because since it wasn't rendering that much on the screen, it didn't need that much components inside of it. They could keep it pretty small. And two...
I mean, kind of. I was going to say, I had a friend that had an Atari Jaguar. Yeah. Holy shit. Thing was fucking huge. It was like holding like a PlayStation in your hand.
Yeah. And like the turbo graphics is pretty big too. It doesn't look as big when you're just looking at a picture of it. But go and hold it in your hand. You're like... This puts the fucking Game Boy to shame in size. But two, again, something the Game Boy Pocket kicked their asses even further in afterwards, battery life. Because of not just the size, so everything it was powering, but also the color screen took way more energy than like the freaking black and white screen is. So you have
like LCD or something.
Yeah, so you have like the Jaguar or the TurboGrafx, and both of them had like an expected battery life of 2.5 hours of gameplay.
Yeah.
As opposed to the original Game Boy that had like 8 hours of battery life. And then it got even better, even though they were using AAAs instead of AA's for the Pocket, because the whole thing was smaller, so it was using less energy. That you could get like 10 hours of battery life off of 2 AAA batteries on the Game Boy Pocket.
Yep, I remember. I'd play my Game Boy until that little power light would just fade away. I was like, hours and hours and hours.
Did I save? Please tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wait, this game doesn't have save. I have to start all over next time I play. More likely.
But yeah, so it's like, there's a lot of things you got to consider. The Wonder Swan had horrible battery life.
Yeah, yeah. And most of those things actually weren't even backlit.
Yeah.
I mean, like the original Game Boy Advance wasn't backlit.
No. It took forever till things were starting to get backlit. So it's like color screens. I remember the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance before the SP. Color screens fucking sucked without a backlight. Like it was okay if you were in a very, very well lit room that had no sunlight coming in. But try playing that thing outside.
But
or
Yeah.
at night.
You know, I had played the hell out of the Dragon Quest 1 and 2 that came out for Game Boy Color. Oh my god, that was just heaven. Even though, the screen still sucked, but you know, I had a little Game Boy Color, so.
Yeah, but like even just considering that, go look at an otherwise inferior system too, because these systems didn't actually run better than the Game Boy did. Go look at the TurboGrafx or the Jaguar, and go play those games that stutter a little bit on a screen that you can't really see. Like, the colors really don't matter. I think the benefit of going black and white is because since it wasn't backlit, the high contrast actually made it easier to see everything that you were doing in the old Game Boy.
Yeah. And then they had all these accessories that shone the light on the screen and stuff.
Yo,
so
those magnifying glasses with the light built in that kind of like flipped up like a transformer were fucking legit as shit.
Yeah. I remember. And they would like take their own batteries or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, so many batteries. Oh my god.
Yeah. But it was great. I loved them. And that's it for the show.
Me too.
Thanks for watching, everyone, either now or in the future. If you enjoy the show, please share it with somebody else who might like it. And if you really enjoy the show, consider giving a donation to streamlabs.com/Vomitorium Live. Not only do you get to see your name kind of like pop up on the screen, even in the past, like if you are listening to this and you want to watch it next time, I've fixed the little thing at the bottom. Your name will still stay there until the next month. I had to recently fix it. That's why yours isn't still there. I couldn't figure out what I had to do at first. I'm like, oh, okay, I need to check this thing, uncheck that, check this thing. But your name will be there.
That's all right.
To help pay for our hosting fees every single month. And we appreciate it. And in till the meantime, whatever. We'll see you in the next episode.
Bye. Have a good weekend.